Welcome back, my friends, to another amazing episode of the Fit Life Orange County. And before I tee up today's guest, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So now to introduce today's guest, who I've been so excited to feature on this podcast. She's a dear friend of my mother, Donna, who has really helped her exponentially from a physical therapy perspective. She is a physical therapist by education and trade, and she is the CEO and founder of Performance Enhancement Incorporated. And today on this show, you are going to learn the difference between a traditional physical therapist and an integrative functional physical therapist, and more importantly, the value that can provide you in handling acute pain and handling your recovery, so that way you can get off the pain track and really get on to living a happy, active, mobile life. So without further ado, Susan Bray, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Fit Life Orange County, a show dedicated to busy men and women focused on taking back control of their fitness and their lives with the help from ideas and programs from local experts here in Orange County. Here are your hosts, Bryce Henson and Jake Stewart.
All right, friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Fit Life Orange County. And today we have Susan Bray. So Susan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to this too, and I have been for a while, and I'm going to tee up that first question here for you in a second. Before I do, the reason I'm so excited is my mother, Donna, who is our customer service rep at Mission Viejo Fit Body Bootcamp, which she's also featured in an episode of Fit Life Orange County, so you have to link to that. But she's been a client of yours for quite some time and has been raving about the service that you provide. Not only the exceptional rehabilitation work, she's moving better and feeling better, but also just an amazing person. So I wanted to give you some acknowledgement for that.
Well, thanks so much, and I love her as well. So feeling is mutual.
Awesome. And I love that. And I love to really connect with really talented, high-value people that we have a relationship with, from a referral perspective. So excited to dive in. And Susan, my first question for you today is really just open-ended. How did you get involved in physical therapy, integration work, and really what's the origin story of your company, Performance Enhancement Incorporated?
Well, it basically, from the time I was little, I knew I wanted to be in the healthcare field. And originally the plan was orthopedic surgery. So I pretty much went into college with a pre-med focus. And while I was trying to figure out, whether or not I wanted to do orthopedic surgery, I was able to find some really awesome surgeons who let me go into the OR and actually observe surgeries and see what it was all about. And as soon as I did that, I realized, this is not a good fit for me. It felt a lot like being a carpenter on a person, very precise. And one thing about me is I'm more artsy, and that was not going to work. I figured all my patients would have lopsided legs, so it would not be good. So then I decided to start looking in the physical therapy realm, and I started getting jobs as aides. And I'm like, oh, this is much better for me. I like the relationship. I like the sports medicine kind of vibe. So I shifted my focus and went on to PT school and started my career. And I've been doing this for over 30 years, started my career really in a more traditional PT setting, and always sports medicine, outpatient orthopedics. And I absolutely love the clientele. I'm a very outdoors person and active. So it was like perfect. I like to move. I don't like to sit at a desk. So everything about it was fabulous. The only problem is that I was, in my first few years of practice, very traditional PT. And I was getting super frustrated with the fact that a lot of what I was taught in school and a lot of what I was doing in the clinic didn't make any sense. And it didn't seem functionally oriented. It was not, I wasn't getting the outcomes I wanted. I wasn't getting the treatment carryover I wanted. So very early in my career, I started seeking out what's missing in all of this. And I started looking into, I need to kind of get to the root cause of what's going on. I don't want to be treating symptoms and doing protocols for the rest of my life that I don't feel like are working. So basically that kind of started a quest, and I started doing a bunch of continuing education, and I basically crafted my entire business over the course of the past 30 years, seeking out things that kept building on my philosophy of get to the root cause, functional biomechanics, and really release things, train things, and get people independently managing their problems.
Oh, that's incredible, and thank you so much for the insight. I guess taking a step back and unpeeling that onion, and you probably did to some extent. Can you describe the differences between "quote unquote" traditional PT or physical therapy, and then versus the functional? And I think high level you did, but would love a little bit more granularity if that works for you.
No, definitely. I Traditional physical therapy, and I don't mean any disrespect to it because, I have a lot of people I really respect that do phenomenal things. What I don't like about it is I feel like oftentimes it boxes you in to protocols and treating symptoms, and you're being forced into a bucket based on insurance requirements and things like that. I was like, this is not working for me. I'm not given enough time to work with the patients to really get to the real root of what's going on. Because oftentimes, when you're treating a patient, I'll give you an example. Somebody comes in with a knee problem, and the knee, unless you've had trauma to your knee, the knee is most often the monkey in the middle. So typically, the foot or the hip is causing what's going on with the knee. So if the person comes in for a knee problem and I'm in a traditional PT setting, I'm going to be more limited with time and resources, and I'm going to have to really focus a lot on the knee, and I'm not going to have as much ability to really go deep into what's going on in the foot, what's going on in the hip, how's that affecting in the low back, and really getting to the root cause. And oftentimes I'll have a patient come in with a knee problem. I'll do all my work in the hip and the low back and maybe a little in the foot. They go, my knee has no pain, but you didn't even touch my knee. I don't get it. And it's like, well, because the knee wasn't the problem. Oftentimes where you have the pain is the thing that's screaming the loudest because something else is not doing its job or something else is stuck. Does that clarify it?
100%. I think that's now it makes sense when you say the symptom versus the root, and really in your functional aspect, that's what you're really, you've gravitated more of, not necessarily focusing on the symptom, but actually the root cause, which obviously has long-term benefits.
Exactly. You're going to get the long-term treatment carryover, and 90% of the patients that come in to see me, quote unquote, I have right shoulder dysfunction of insidious onset, which means it just started hurting over time and suddenly I can't move my shoulder anymore. So it's about why. There wasn't an incident, I didn't have an injury, explain that. And oftentimes in the system of traditional or a more Western approach, they're going to get a lot of testing and things that are going to go through so many different things looking for a pathology, where oftentimes they're not going to find anything because it's a fascially related problem, and fascia needs to be touched and assessed and watch movement. It's not something you're going to find on a test. It's not something that's going to necessarily be torn. It's not something that's necessarily going to be broken. It's something that I assess functionally, looking at the movement, the tissue, and then throwing in the wellness factor and all those different contributing factors to really figure out what caused that tissue dysfunction.
Got it. Love the philosophy and certainly very much on board with that. So appreciate the insight. Now, kind of transition my next question, and really want to give you the opportunity just to kind of talk a little bit more about your practice, what services you provided or provide, what you do exceptionally well. I know from my mother Donna, she raves about your joint and muscle work, but really want to kind of open it up just to really give our audience insight to really your zone of genius within your practice.
Basically, the fact that I've morphed my practice into what I now refer to as an integrated wellness practice. So the way I look at that is it's a three-tiered approach. Number one, fascia. Fascia, if people don't understand what that is, just to kind of unpack that a bit, is basically the way I describe it to patients is think about the white stuff on a chicken when you take the skin off the chicken. It's essentially responsible for your structural integrity. So if you think about it from that standpoint, bones and joints by definition are space. And in a very well integrated body, what you're going to have is your bones are floating in the tension of your fascia. So a balanced body has fascia that allows everything to move and groove. And I have this little guy as a perfect little example. So this would be a pelvis and these are the legs. So think of the black as the fascia and this is the bones. This kind of movement of everything going sliding and gliding, and it's a very beautiful tensegrity type structure in which everything balances and counterbalances itself. So there's not a injury around that does not have a fascial component to it. So the number one thing that I do is address the fascia from the superficial to the deep, which the superficial is the skin all the way down to the periosteum of the bone, the soft tissue on the bone. So basically, I have to figure out what's stuck and release it so that we can kind of balance the tension, if that makes sense. From that point, I go to the next tier, which is then the functional biomechanics. Once I free something, now you need to know how to control that motion, and you have to have strength and stability around that new mobility. And if you don't learn how to three-dimensionally move, so when I say three-dimensionally, think forward, back, side to side, and rotation. There's 3 planes of motion. And what you want to do is teach a client now how to move through that joint and from the foot all the way up to the head with loading, and thinking about things loading from the ground as well as things loading from the top, and training that tissue how to stabilize that new motion so that as I've freed things, now it will stay and I'll get treatment carryover between sessions. And then each session I can build on that. And then the third tier that I layer in is functional medicine wellness. And that's where we then layer in lifestyle, sleep, hydration, nutrition. Do you need to do any kind of functional testing? And then I have partnerships with a lot of like-minded healthcare professionals in which we all cross-refer and share patients. So then if something goes a little bit out of my wheelhouse, like for instance, if I free fascia, one of the really nice things about that is now I can send you to an acupuncturist and you're going to get a much better result from acupuncture because I've freed a lot of those channels to make that acupuncture work better. Or if I have a lot of functional testing and things that need to be looked at, I have a naturopath I work with and functional medicine doctors that I can refer to. And then I have people in like the Pilates and the yoga realm. And then I have like-minded people in natural facials and things like that. So anything that's in that holistic wellness space, I partner with. I have functional trainers and places like your Fit Body Boot Camp, things where I know people are going to be able to go get good training and be safe and not re-injure themselves. And that's kind of the 3-pronged approach that I have that gives me a much better outcome than a traditional, just kind of protocol-based, really myopic view.
Yeah, well, that makes a ton of sense, provides a lot of insight, and certainly positions your expertise very well. Now, speaking of clients, our mission is really to get people healthy and fit and moving and active. And certainly one thing that COVID hopefully has taught us is, there's a health crisis in our country with the obesity epidemic and just people not taking care of themselves and really needing to eat, better, sleep better, move better. And me coming from the personal training realm, it's really important that our clients stay, safe and not injured, so that way they can continue with their movement. So I guess from your lens, what are the biggest issues typically that you see when a client comes to your door? I guess, the common, few that you see, and ways that you treat them, or at least, solutions that you can offer.
Well, almost everybody comes in with some level of postural instability and just general dysfunction in their structural stability because of the fact that we spend so much time sitting in front of a computer, driving in a car, whatever the case may be. Most people's work is probably the worst enemy that they have because they shut down all their muscles. They get really hyper focused on their work, too much time on the computer. They're not getting outdoors. They're not getting grounded. They're not getting sunlight. They're getting all the blue light exposure from the computer. And then the position just is really detrimental to their body. So many of my clients that come in, it's just really rebalancing their postural stability and just kind of reacquainting them with a new alignment in gravity and a new orientation in gravity, and training them how to be there, training them how to stay healthy and mobile. All the way up to my 85-year-old patients, some of the homework I give them is getting on and off the floor multiple times a day. Because the older we get, the more we start limiting what we're doing and just saying, well, I'm older now, I can't do that anymore. And I refuse to believe that. My goal is I want my patients living until they die. I want them being able to do what they're passionate about, playing on the floor with their grandchildren, traveling, going, exercising, whatever it is their passion is. So it's about getting them to understand that you have the power over this and you can actually do so many things with your lifestyle that can enhance your optimal health and wellness and keep you mobile and vital until you're very, very old. That's my goal with people. And I do that through movement and the functional medicine, nutritional lifestyle stuff, because that's really, those two have to be tied together because, they're the yin to the yang.
Well, we are kindred spirits and certainly aligned there because, very similar passion for me as well. Now, kind of diving in, and granted, I'm sure it ranges depending on the client and the ailment and all that, but, how long do your patients usually see you for? And then what's your recommendation in terms of frequency? Is it a once a week, twice a week, more than that? Would love some insight on, your typical client.
Well, the type of work I do is incredibly effective. And the beautiful thing about the fascial work that I do and the training that I've had has really brought me to the ability where my work kind of continues after you leave my office as you're kind of adapting to whatever I've done. So the nice thing is almost every patient, every time they get off the table, feels some kind of a difference, which is amazing. And I love that. And then when they come back in, I'm usually building on where we were from the time before. I'm not starting over, which I love. That is actually optimized if the patient is really compliant with the home program, which is a definite key piece of it, as you well know, because you probably have the same issues. So thankfully, most of my clients are very motivated, so that really helps tremendously. But if you have an acute injury, my average is 1 to 5 visits. So I'm usually very efficient at getting somebody back to whatever their quote unquote normal is. Typically, I don't ever see people more than once a week. And as they're getting more independent, I start moving it even further back because I want them to have time to adapt to the changes, and appointments too close together prevent that from happening. And then what I usually like to do, and most of my patients are on board with this, is I like to create some form of a maintenance program. That maintenance program is different for every patient. Every patient is very individualized. I have some patients that are brutal to their bodies. They're high level Ironman triathletes and up to endurance athletes. Those people are beating themselves up. So they might come once a week, once every couple weeks. Then I have patients that just kind of want to stay on top of things, and they might come once a month or once every couple months. So it just kind of depends. Once we hit, optimization, then we kind of come to a mutual agreement because I partner with my patients. It's a very collaborative approach. And I let them kind of figure out, like, what do you think you need to maintain the changes and keep yourself able to do the things you want to do?
Yeah. Love it. All right, shifting gears a little bit, and not so much in the technical aspect, but really, humans are very emotional beings. So we have all sorts of emotions: excitement, nervousness, apprehension, concern. What would you say from your perspective that when the average person comes off the street and gives you a call, maybe a referral, or heard about you from a friend as an example, what type of concerns do they have before taking that first step? And then additionally, I would love you to walk us through like what your first time experience from a client perspective looks like.
Well, basically, most patients that call me, their number one concern is because of the types of patients that I get, I typically get the patients that have failed a million other treatments. And so I'm usually like the last stop. They're at the point where the doctor has now sent them to pain management and we don't know what to do with you anymore. That's typically the patients that I end up getting a lot of. And so what happens is they're number one believing that there's nobody that can help them and that there's nothing that's going to ever work. So I have to encourage them that it's not over till it's over and there's always room for change. And even if you have something that's a pretty progressive disease or something that's gone on for a really long time, I can still make changes. I never promise that I'm going to cure anything, but I can usually make the function better, make the pain less, just give them a little bit more control over their life. The number one objection or concern people will have is that the reason I get those patients at the very end of the road is because I am a cash based business. So many people want to try their insurance covered options first. And so they're not excited about paying cash because they feel like, they have a right to their insurance. And so I explain to them that basically I'm very effective at what I do. I get the job done quickly. The time they're spending is 100% with me full hour with me. I am not pawning anybody off on anybody else. And it's all my hands and expertise. I'm not spending time with ice packs and things like that. It's all hands on, either movement, manual therapy, nutrition counseling, things like that. So they really feel like they're going to get good value for their dollar. And at first experience, basically somebody comes out. Usually what I do is a phone consultation to make sure the person feels like we're a good match. And I also want to make sure it's something that I think I can actually help. And if it is, I tell them, come on in, because in order for you to truly understand whether or not we're a good fit, you have to feel and experience the tissue work, because no matter how much I try to explain it, I can't explain it effectively. You have to feel it on the table. And especially if you've had failed treatment in the past, they really, the second they get off the table, they're like, oh, I get it. And oh man, totally different, balanced, grounded. That feels completely different than when I walked in. And I can't express that on a phone call. And I can't describe that in written word. I can't even show that. You have to feel it. So they come in for the eval. The eval is usually 2 hours. I spend a good hour really understanding where they're coming from and what their needs are. And then I want to spend a full hour on treatment and a really good home program, so that they, at least if they never come back again, they have something that they can take home and continue on with. But thankfully, most of my people want to come back after that first visit.
Good. Well, like my mother Donna, who's been coming to you for a very long time and just continues to rave about you, so there's certainly something special in your practice.
What's up, my friend? Coach Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the owner of Mission Viejo Fit Body. But what many people don't know is that I began my journey as a fitness transformation story. You see, circuit training and nutrition coaching absolutely changed my life after being overweight with a diet of mainly fast food in my late teens. Now, upon my fitness transformation in early 2007, yes, I gained a much better physique as I was overweight and lacked lean muscle. But way more than burning fat and building lean muscle, I increased my confidence, my energy, and my vibrancy to live life. And it's for these reasons that many people join our boot camp. In fact, with our Ultimate Transformation Program, we guarantee that you will lose at least 15 pounds in 12 weeks, or your program is free until you do. Now go ahead and visit our website at missionviejofitbody.com. Now thanks, and back to the show.
So changing gears a little bit, and not actually just kind of taking that thought a little bit further, we've been talking about just hypothetical, client experiences that you have, kind of what their hesitations are, what type of treatment you offer. People, human nature, we're built for story. So I would love to hear maybe a successful story or two of one of your clients that's been in pain, had acute or chronic, or whatever the case may be, maybe thought that, literally this was it, kind of to your point, that they've explored all options, that nothing was ever going to work for them, and then somehow they found a solution with you. Do you have maybe a story or two that you can share?
Yeah, I have a couple, and I'm going to start with my favorite, because this guy by far was probably one of the coolest client experiences I've had. He was middle-aged, mid-60s, and he was an athlete his whole life. He worked in an office job, retired, and then, kind of decided, I'm bored. What should I do? Decides to go work for Lowe's. So he's at Lowe's on the 13-foot ladder, pulling something off of the shelf, and they tie in and everything with the carabiner, and he goes to pull the item off the shelf, and apparently his carabiner never connected. And so he pulled himself off the ladder, and he literally fell 13 feet to the ground on that cement floor of Lowe's. So the fact that he didn't die, the fact that he didn't have a major head injury, the fact that he wasn't a quadriplegic is in and of itself amazing. But he did have a neck fracture, but it was a stable fracture, so it didn't require a halo or anything. And he had been going to physical therapy, and he'd been in treatment for over 10 months when I found it, or he was referred to me. And basically what he described to me on his first visit, first off, he came into my practice kind of like that. And he hit on the upper left side of his head, and he was completely like cockeyed. And he basically said he has like constant brain fog. All of his pain was on the left-hand side. He basically said that in his treatment that he was doing for 10 months, every time he'd go in for treatment, He'd get work done, and then for 2-3 days he was in excruciating pain after the session, and then he'd go back. And I'm like, but you kept going back? I thought that was a little interesting. And he did that for 10 months. And I said, okay, explain to me what they did. And they basically just did a ton of work where, he had all the pain. And so once I started treating him after we went through the evaluation, I started playing around with everything. And I said, okay, first off, the reason that you were getting such severe pain from your previous therapy is that there's short tight and long tight. So if your head is tilted in this position, this is getting cranked on. So you're in a lot of pain because that's being constantly overstretched. But what's happening is this right side is completely compressed, which is what's holding it there. So I said, I'm going to have a different approach for how I'm going to do this. And I spent 20 minutes with him. And most of what I did was sternum into this whole anterior neck, and basically to decompress him. And literally 20 minutes. He gets off the table, he sits up, and he goes, oh, my goodness. And I said, what? And, wow, I'm 80% better, and the brain fog is gone. And the really cool thing was that his head was completely straight. Now, I didn't even do any joint work. It was just all the tissue work. I didn't even have to do the joint work because the tissue work released it. And literally, this is just 20 minutes after an injury that happened 10 months ago. So I'm on a guy in his mid-60s. So I was not thinking he would get that amazing of a result. So I was happy with that, but I'm still not happy unless it stays, because it doesn't really matter if it happens when he gets off my table. So 3 days later, he texts me, I'm still 80% better. And I'm like, wow. Okay, so I was really excited about that. He came back in. It was 2 more treatments. The second treatment was 90% better, and then the third treatment done, never saw him again. And he was done. So he was probably my most amazing and a perfect example of not treating where they point, getting to the root cause of what's causing the problem. And he just had an amazing result.
And that was my first thought when you were dialoguing that, like symptom versus root. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, obviously you saw the visual. If you were watching on audio, Susan, kind of demonstrated the initial pain was on the left side, and then all of a sudden she treated the root, which is the right side, and that really is what made everything better. So that's just a classic example of really your philosophy. So job well done. You mentioned you have 2. Do you have another one up your sleeve?
Yeah, I have another one, and we're kind of still in progress with this one, but she's just such a cool patient. I want to express it because I just think it's a really cool case. She's somebody who had a very traumatic injury and was thrown and landed on her right arm and shattered the forearm. Tore off tendons off her ring finger, jammed the shoulder, and that was probably 15 years ago. And then had subsequent other things go on in the course of that time. Nobody ever really addressed the shoulder. They just kind of addressed the fracture, and the finger was multiple surgeries. And then over the course of time, 15 years later, or I would say maybe even 13 years later, started having severe left leg hip pain and went to over 17 doctors. And some of the top doctors went through every imaginable test, MRIs, CAT scans, bone scans, you name it, pain management, everything. And everybody's like, you're done. And they just sent her to pain management. And this is a really vibrant woman who plans to do lots into her future, traveling and doing all these different things. She's been wanting to go back to Paris. She had all these plans and was pretty much, this is my life now. I'm not going to be able to move. I'm in chronic pain, and I can't even walk the dog without pain. So when she came to me, I think she came to me reluctantly, not really necessarily expecting much. And what I did is got in, and it was all, I showed her standing pictures of herself just to show her how crumbled her legs, her feet, her hips were. And as we kind of did the evaluation and got into the treatment, I explained to her that you literally have no base of support for your shoulder and your neck. And the trauma to your right arm caused an internal fascial twist that the left leg is compensating for. So the pain that you have in your left leg, the reason they haven't found anything is because there's no pathology in your left leg. It's a fascial twist and a compensation. So what we have to do is untwist that, and we have to rebalance your legs. So I've done maybe 3 to 5 treatments with her. And again, this has been going on for the original injury was 15 years ago, but the severe pain has been 2 years, and she's really not been able to walk for like a year and a half. Well, and in 5 treatments, she's currently on a vacation and she's already planning her trip to Paris. Now, we're not done at all. We've got a lot more work to do, but she's making steady gains. And she told me, I've actually had days where I feel normal again. And she hasn't had that in a lot of years. So that's a really exciting, progression to see. I was really, really excited to see that it's taking so well and carrying over, and that we're able to build on that.
That is absolutely incredible. And stories like this, they just light my heart up, helping people move better, feel better, live better. And that's really what it's all about. So, Susan, I'm so impressed and proud and grateful for you to be able to share your wisdom here. We still have a few more minutes for the lightning round to be able to extract some last minute knowledge for you if you're up for it.
I am always up for that.
All right. Well, the first question, I love this, and you seem to be a very passionate person. I certainly am. But what's your biggest passion to these days, and why?
It's wellness, movement. Wellness, I'm on a personal journey and with my patients. Movement, because the move it or lose it couldn't be more true. And I'm really passionate about life balance and self-care, and I really try and empower my patients to do that and realize that you take control of your health and wellness, and you can really stave off so many chronic illnesses and potential things that are going to take away passions that you have into your future and lifestyle choices that you want to do. And if you take control of it now, you can prevent that from happening down the road and robbing you of living a vital life into your final and senior years.
Amen. All right, next question. What's a unique value bomb about just the physical therapy industry that most people probably should know, but for whatever reason they don't?
Just basically, again, empowerment, that it's never too late. There's always something that can be done to just recalibrate your physicality and your body in space, and take all the years of abuse and the injuries and the car accidents and the stress and the life attacks, the gravity, and recalibrate all of that and get to a place where you can actually have control over your ability to be so vital in all the things that you love.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question, a little bit, I guess, for a right turn, if you will, but this is a local health and podcast show. Where's an amazing place in Orange County that we can find you just kind of hanging out, leisure? Would love maybe some tips and recommendations, this beautiful place that we live in.
My favorite place to be is paddleboarding, and anywhere from South Laguna down. So
beautiful. Love
paddleboarding and love being on the water. And that is and there's a million places to do it in South Orange County.
Well, yes, there is. All right, as we kind of tail in, I would love to be able to provide some contact information, maybe your website or social media handles for anyone interested. So I'm curious on what those would be. And also, too, if someone's interested in working together, do you have an introductory offer, or kind of what's that next step look like? So really, where can they find you for my contact information, and really how do they take that next step?
For my website, it's performanceenhancement.net. That's how you get to my website. And the best way to contact me is not through the website, but through Instagram. PEI, which stands for Performance Enhancement Incorporated. So PEI.wellnesspt. And there's a contact form on there if people want to reach out and start contact with me. And as far as introductory offers, I'm happy to offer $50 off the initial evaluation. For anybody who is a listener of the show, just tell them to mention the show, and that's where they heard it, and I'm happy to offer $50 off.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much. So you heard this, friends. When you hear the show, and basically reach out to Susan, just mention that you heard us from Fit Life Orange County, and she'll be happy to give you that $50 discount. So that's awesome. Thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, my last question for you, Susan. This has been absolutely incredible. Really just your parting piece of wisdom for our audience. And, there's someone listening to this that's in pain, that they know they need to find another solution, but for whatever reason they're hesitant, they're nervous, they're scared, just natural human apprehension. Maybe they went to another PT and they just haven't had success. What is your parting piece of wisdom for that person?
Basically, seek out a practitioner who is willing to partner and collaborate with you, as somebody who's going to listen to you, and somebody who is going to give you the guidance and strategy for what you can do on your own to create independent management of the problem. The goal is that I'm hopefully a type of person that's going to give the person strategies and tools for their toolbox to know that they can independently manage this problem down the road, and empower them with the fact that if they make the lifestyle changes, if they are willing to do the homework, they're going to get amazing results. But understand that it's going to be work, and that depending on how long and chronic the problem is, it's going to take longer to get out of it. You didn't get in it overnight, so you've got to be patient and willing to create the lifestyle habits. And I'm willing to help that person along the way. So find a practitioner who's going to work with you and really help and coach you, because there's going to be bumps in the road, and you've got to just, and my number one rule with my patients is an 80-20 rule. If 80% of the time you're doing the right thing, don't beat yourself up for the 20% that you're not. Be kind to yourself in your missteps, because it's all part of the process, and perfection does not exist. And if you're shooting for perfection, you're going to end up failing. So allow yourself the grace of an 80-20. And in a perfect world, 90-10. So as you get better, I go for 90-10. But, starting 80-20.
Well said. Incredible takeaway. Interestingly enough, I was interviewed on a podcast earlier today talking about, giving yourself grace when you have a misstep. I didn't hear it in the 80-20 or 90-10 framework, and I love that. I'm going to take that from you if you're okay with that, Susan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Very much resonated. Well, thank you so much. Before we wrap the episode, I just want to take a second just to acknowledge you one more time, deeply, humbly, authentically. I feel like we're kindred spirits. This is the first time we've really connected, but I've been hearing for the longest time from my mother about the incredible person you are, the incredible work that you've done, really how you've helped her in an amazing way. And I'm a huge fan of referrals and mouth-to-mouth business, especially when you find someone really fantastic. So, on behalf of my mother, behalf of my family, and really on behalf of, our Mission Viejo Fit Body community, as well as our Fit Life Orange County community, I just want to thank you for being a light in the world and really swimming towards and really supporting people along this journey. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate that you're creating this platform to get a lot of people out there to educate the public on health and wellness, because I think it's so important. And if COVID-19 taught us nothing, it's that's of primary concern. You focus on that and you'll stay out of trouble.
Ooh. Well said. Kindred spirits aligned on that same path. So, Susan, thanks again. And friends, I know you got a ton of value, assuming you did. Give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. And while you're at it, drop your biggest takeaway in the comments. And also would love for you to engage with myself and Susan so we can help you in your fitness journey. So that's all. Susan, thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you.